We've played fantasy football all season long. We get to the postseason, and some of us want to keep playing. And if you're watching this video, you probably want to keep playing, maybe in a contest over on Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Davis for deposit match. If you've not signed up, playoff best ball fantasy football is actually, honestly, my favorite way to play fantasy football. If you've never played it before, particularly on Underdog, very simple. You will enter into a draft. They are 6-person drafts. You need to fill out a quarterback, a running back, 2 wide receivers or tight ends, 1 flex, and then you get 5 bench spots. So 6 people in every draft. And then it is a 10-round draft. Sounds pretty simple. That's because it is pretty simple, although most people are generally pretty bad at these formats. But because you're watching this video, you are not going to be bad. This is a set it and forget it format. So you draft your team before the beginning of the NFL playoffs, and those are the 10 players that you have on a given roster. And before we get into the nitty gritty of how to draft these teams, let me just make a very clear point. Advancing out of round 1, advancing out of round 2, these things do not matter. All the money for these contests is awarded in the Super Bowl. So every time that you go to enter into one of these drafts, that you go to compete in an Underdog Fantasy or DraftKings, wherever fantasy football, make sure that you are able to fill out a starting lineup for the Super Bowl. That means whether it's a combination of AFC or NFC or a full AFC, full NFC, in the Super Bowl, you are able to field a quarterback, a running back, 2 wide receivers or tight ends, and a flex. If you are not able to do that, then you've drafted a bad lineup. And we don't want to draft bad lineups. We want you guys to draft very good lineups. So after drafting, your team is entered into a tournament that spans the 4 NFL playoff rounds, wildcard, divisional, conference championship, and the Super Bowl, as you guys can see here from the advanced structure. Most of the time in these contests, the 2 teams advance out of your 6-person pod to begin with. Then you go into a larger pod after advancing, after that cut down, and then it's 1 out of 10. Then it's 1 out of 10 after that. And generally speaking, there's going to be a final, depending on the contest that you're in, between 150. I think some of the DraftKings contests get even bigger, but there's going to be between 150 and maybe 500 or so. I actually have the results from a 2024 contest here. You can see a winning team, and I think this will be a great way to work backwards. So in 2024, the Super Bowl teams were the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. So this team had Jalen Hurts at quarterback. It had both Isaiah Pacheco and Saquon Barkley at running back. Xavier Worthy, so 1 Chief, DeAndre Hopkins, 2 Chiefs, and then it had Devonta Smith, players that were not able to be used for multiple rounds. McLaurin made the NFC Conference Championship. Goddard was also eligible there as well. Amari Cooper was there as well. This is a very good roster. Something that you'll also notice is some of the other players on these teams, because there's multiple ways to get there, but all that matters is having the players in the Super Bowl. So we've got a Russell Wilson, a Najee Harris, very funny to remember the Steelers there. And then let's see what this 10-minute, actually, by the way, is a friend of this YouTube channel. So he's got a Gainwell, he's got a Keon Coleman. None of that really matters, but it's just to highlight the point. You got to have 5 guys in the Super Bowl. Doesn't matter if you advance out of round 1. If you advance out of round 1 in most of these contests, sometimes you don't even get your money back. In this tournament, you happen to exactly get your money back. But basically, what I would like to impart to you is there is essentially almost no value in just advancing out of round 1. So if you get the famous example from 2024 is that Ladd McConkey went absolutely nuts in a Los Angeles Chargers loss, 9 for 197 and 1. Ladd McConkey, if you had him, you basically did advance out of round 1. What did you guys just notice about those winning teams? Ladd McConkey was not on them because Ladd McConkey only got 1 game. So the game that we are trying to do, if this is a helpful way to think about it, and I think that it should be, is think about a projection this way. Whatever the baseline projection for a player would be in a Super Bowl, multiply that by their odds that they would be in a Super Bowl. So a great example of this would be if we scroll here to win. I actually want to go by win conference odds. So let's go win conference odds and let's take a look at the San Francisco 49ers. They are 15-1 to win the NFC. So 1 out of every 15 times, roughly, the San Francisco 49ers are the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. That would mean that someone like Juwan Jennings, who projects pretty well in a given game, is a way worse pick than someone like Khalif Raymond. Now, let me say that again. Juwan Jennings way worse pick than Khalif Raymond. Or how about Tyler Higbee? How about an even more drastic example? Tyler Higbee, roughly, they're listed at they're listed at 3-1. So one every three times the Rams are the NFC representative in the Super Bowl, which means that Tyler Higbee is like eons better of a fantasy football pick than Juwan Jennings most of the time because he's so much more likely to be in the Super Bowl. People have a really hard time with that in playoff best ball, foregoing very good fantasy players who are going to play in round one for guys who are very likely to be active in the Super Bowl. Kind of the best picks in playoff best ball. Looking at the Eagles, you've got guys like Tank Bigsby. You've got guys like Kylan Granson on the Rams. You have Higbee, Colby Parkinson, Davis Allen, Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington. On the Bills, you have guys like Ty Johnson, Ray Davis. These guys are better picks than Kenneth Walker, for example. And I know that feels wrong. Like the way we're looking at it right now, it does feel wrong. But effectively, the way that you want to think about things is all that matters is the points that you get in the Super Bowl. And I know that is very tough. Another key thing to talk about is that you do not want to overload on guys who get the bye. The bye is basically one of the hardest things to deal with because the Super Bowl equity is probably pretty high for those players. I use the Athletics playoff simulator to check a lot of this stuff. This just happens to be the 2025 projected standings. As of right now, the Eagles and the Patriots are the teams that are most likely to get the bye. It's very, very hard to advance bye week teams, right? That's just the nature of the beast. Obviously, it can be done. I mean, we just saw a result of multiple one seed teams in 2024 and in 2023. It happened where we had, I believe the first Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl was actually one seed versus one seed. So very tough to advance in that circumstance. But let's say the New England Patriots are a team that we think is like really exceedingly likely to both be the one seed and make the Super Bowl. A lot of the times when you're drafting those teams, you might only want to take 3 Patriots players and then mix and match with other NFC teams. Like, for example, if we did Drake May, Ramondre Stevenson, and Hunter Henry, then we would really want to get Matt Stafford or Jared Goff on the other side, guys who are not likely to get the one seed, and then maybe take 4 Rams, 4 Lions, which actually sets us up for a potential Super Bowl where we have the Patriots represented, but we also were able to advance in round one. Because you do still need to advance, obviously, some of your teams. Playoff best ball fantasy football is very interesting because it's basically the one contest where if you are pursuing an optimal strategy, you are actually going to advance under expectation. Expectation in a given tournament, if 2 out of 6 advance, would be 33% of your teams would advance to the next round. If you are really drafting these optimally, if you're really stacking for the Super Bowl, then you are really unlikely to actually advance 33% of your teams. I know it's crazy, but I promise you that it works. And obviously, on top of this, a key thing that you need to be doing is you just need to be stacking teams from the same players. It feels so obvious, but let's say in the first round we select Josh Allen. Well, you know what you do when you select Josh Allen? You need to be on top of that, taking Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, Tyrell Shavers, Josh Palmer. When you make that investment, again, it's very simple. But when you're loading up on a team that you expect to make the Super Bowl, like you don't want to have, I would say you almost never on one 10-man roster want to have more than 4 teams represented. And 4 might even be a bit much. I guess an example where 4 teams might make sense would be if you started a draft and you just took every Rams player. So you started a draft and you did Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams, Matt Stafford. Then you could take, 2 Chiefs, 2 Bills, 1 Bronco, 1 Patriot. That might be something that would make sense. But I think really in general, the core best ball strategy we want to do here is we want to be stacking, Josh Allen and Dalton Kincaid together. First off, it also not only does it help your Super Bowl equity, it actually helps your advance rate because it's going to put those spike weeks together in the same lineup. I would also encourage you as you head into a given draft, just have a plan. Every time you hop into a given draft and you see your draft slot, just have a plan. Say, okay, this time we are going to do a Lions Broncos Super Bowl. This time we are going to do a Chargers, Eagles, Super Bowl, and then you pursue that on the way down. You do need to remain flexible in a given draft, though, because you're going to see this when you get in these streets. There is going to be a lot of times when you're like, oh, I absolutely, if I do not get Lamar Jackson, this team is cooked, right? So like, let's say I took Derrick Henry, I took Zay Flowers, but I got sniped on Lamar Jackson. Also, a very interesting and different thing about playoff best ball, quarterback is the most important position. Unlike regular season best ball, unlike all these other contests we play in fantasy football, because if you don't get the quarterback, you're screwed. If there happens to be an Eagles Bills Super Bowl and you don't have Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts on your roster, doesn't matter if you have Saquon Barkley, James Cook, everyone else, you lose. You are going to lose to a team that has Josh Allen and Tyrell Shavers by like a lot. If it is a Patriots Rams Super Bowl, you don't have Drake May or Matt Stafford, you are going to lose. So I think that it's a real reverse in thinking for a lot of us, but the quarterback position does end up being incredibly important in terms of optimal roster construction. The earlier you are drafting playoff best ball teams, the more likely it is that you should take two quarterbacks, because if you're drafting early, a lot of times you're not going to know who the one seed is going to be. Is it going to be the Eagles or the Rams or the Lions? Is it going to be the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Patriots? Like, who is the one seed going to be? But in general, you kind of want to have it would be 1 to 2 quarterbacks, basically never 3, 3 to 4 running backs, and 4 to 6 wide receivers / tight ends. On DraftKings, you do oftentimes there is a format where you need a tight end, which kind of is its own little interesting strategy wrinkle there. So it makes guys like Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid even more valuable. Another big difference in playoff best ball is that this is actually the format to take like third string nobodies. Ty Johnson in playoff best ball is like a million times better of a pick than Ken Walker, because the Bills Super Bowl equity is so much higher. Again, this comes back to the multiplication of the projection. Ty Johnson might project in a given game for like 4 points, and Kenneth Walker might project for like 12. But because the Bills are so much more likely to make the Super Bowl than the Seattle Seahawks, Ty Johnson is actually a better pick. In a given year, there's a very easy way to accomplish these goals. Go to your odds provider of choice. I'm using the unabated stuff, but you can use whatever you want. These are the win conference odds, and that's basically what you want to do. Basically, your rankings should just be the odds that a given player makes the Super Bowl, and that is exactly what the win conference odds are. So in 2025, the Eagles, the Rams, the Bills, the Colts, the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Lions, the Ravens, the Seahawks still pretty good, Patriots still pretty good, but then you start getting into 18 to 1 for the Chargers, 14 to 1 for the Buccaneers. That is where it starts to get really thin, where you start to go, hey, the Packers 1 out of every 8 times to make the Super Bowl. Like, that doesn't feel particularly great to me. Also, if you are drafting early, like these contests are generally open from late November to when the playoffs actually start. I really like to use this athletic playoff simulator to give me the odds of like what would happen. So just for example, at this moment in time, the Kansas City Chiefs have like a relatively rough road to hoe, but their Super Bowl odds are very high. Their conference championship odds are very high. And this athletic tool lets me show, okay, how likely is it that this team makes the postseason. So if they win this game, they win that game, they win this game, they are 88% to make the postseason or whatever. And you can kind of just tool and mess around with that. But basically, for playoff best ball, the thing overall that you need to think is that it doesn't actually really matter how good a player is for fantasy. Your opinion of who is more likely to score fantasy points between Josh Allen and Daniel Jones doesn't actually matter. Your opinion of how likely those players are to win a Super Bowl or win a conference championship is actually far more important. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hop into a draft right now. And I'm going to explore these strategies as we go through. Hopefully this will be hopefully that will be helpful. Hopefully it will show you, kind of the way that these strategies work in real time. So we are picking second in this given draft. The way that the ADPs are shaking out early in 2025. And again, you guys could be, I mean, frankly, I hope you guys are watching this 6 years from now. So I almost always want to go with the high end quarterback over the high end skill position player. The Buffalo Bills are third in Super Bowl equity overall, or in conference championship equity. So we are going to take Josh Allen. Then once we take Josh Allen, the thing that we need to think is, okay, who do I want to pair with him on the NFC side? And who do I want to pair with him on his teammates? It's going to be really unlikely we get James Cook, but we are going to highlight his teammates. Would be very possible for us to take 4 Bills teammates in this given draft. Once we have those 4 Bills teammates, we can say, okay, well, we're going to take some Eagles. We're going to take some Lions. Maybe we try and represent 2 NFC guys. Maybe one of the NFC teams that we think has like a really good individual point score. Maybe there's an NFC team we're a little bit higher on. Because when you do take Josh Allen and you're planning out a roster spot for a Ty Johnson or a Ray Davis, you are kind of acknowledging, well, that's going to be a little bit harder for us to advance. When you take a Justice Hill on the Ravens, when you take a Brashard Smith on the Chiefs, you're kind of giving up a spot in round 1. Now, our options here would be, I actually would take Jalen Hurts just because that's such a rare ADP value. Wow. Or we could take James Cook. It's actually already okay. So this is a very rare ADP combination that we just got. That's probably not applying to you if you're watching this any later. But that's something very valuable too in playoff best ball that you need to be thinking about, which is, well, those rare combinations, getting Barkley and Hurts together, getting Puka and Kyron together. Those are pretty valuable things. So now we need to say there's not really a bill that we need to take here. So let's take AJ Brown and set ourselves up a potential Buffalo Philadelphia Super Bowl. And then we can start thinking, all right, let's go look at the NFC odds. So all the good Rams players are gone. Do we want to start taking some Lions players? Do we want to start taking some Seahawks players? Another thing you can do, and I actually don't think that this is what I would call like really optimal, but you could also represent another AFC team that is a little bit later down in the seedings. So maybe our next pick could be Dallas Goedert. And then the pick after that, potentially we do like 2 Broncos players. We take Bo Nix and Troy Franklin. That sets us up basically 4 possible Super Bowls that we could combine to have a roster. I think that if you are drafting a portfolio of these teams, that does make some sense sometimes. Like some of your teams, you'd like to have representative of 4 possible Super Bowls. I wouldn't make it my core strategy. So we are about to be back up. Mahomes is still available. So we could do what do we do? I don't really want to take Shakir here. Jared Goff is not been selected either. If we were going to take an Eagles player, it would be Dallas Goedert. You know what? Let's just stick to the script here and really just show something that is not complicated at all. So we're going to take Khalil Shakir. That is our 3rd Bills player. Again, still opening it up for us to add another NFC team in if we wanted. And now we are going to select Dallas Goedert, which is going to be another Eagles player. So right now, we actually have a Super Bowl roster. We could kind of do anything else we want I'm not saying anything else you want would be good, but we have Josh Allen, who will be our quarterback in a Philadelphia Buffalo Super Bowl. James Cook will be our running back, and our wide receivers would be AJ Brown, Khalil Shakir, and Dallas Goedert, with one of those skill position players going in the flex. Mahomes is still available. Okay, there you go. So Mahomes is selected. Another thing we could have done there would have been to take Dallas Goedert first, or to take Mahomes and then Goddard. And that could have set up a Bills Chiefs versus the Eagles. Either of them being in the Super Bowl, either of those would have been okay. Something I'm thinking here is all the good Lions skill position players are gone, but we could do, to add in an NFC team, we could do Jared Goff and then David Montgomery, which would give us a second Super Bowl combination with the Eagles. And given that there's basically no difference between the Bills skill position players at this spot, I think that's what I'm going to do because the Lions Super Bowl equity, one out of every 6 seasons, effectively, they are able to make the Super Bowl out of the NFC side. I believe as of the time I'm recording this, they're not even technically in the postseason, which is always sort of interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Goff, and then we are going to take Montgomery or Laporta. Actually, for roster construction reasons, we would rather. Well, actually, it doesn't matter. It actually does not matter the difference between if we take Montgomery, we could add in another AFC team, which I don't think is strong. It's actually probably a higher advance rate strategy. So we're going to add in David Montgomery here. So now we have 2 distinct Super Bowls covered. We actually have Bills, Lions. Well, actually, we're one short. We're one short. We will need to add one more Buffalo Bills player in order to have a Lions Super Bowl covered with the Bills. So one more Bills player. So if we add in Keon Coleman or Ty Johnson, it's going to be Keon Coleman for positional reasons because we already have the one running back slot full. So the thing you need to be turning over in your mind at this stage of the draft is, do I want to maybe add in another potential Super Bowl? So do I want to add in Daniel Jones already went. So do I want to add in a Packers player? Do I want to add in Matthew Golden for a third potential representative? Or do I want to just keep adding strength on top of strength? Do I want to add in another Lions player? Do I think it's really likely that Isaac Tesla or Khalif Raymond ends up scoring in a Super Bowl? So the most important thing for us to do is we are going to add Keon Coleman, who is another Bills player. And just to show you how deep this stuff goes, like you can definitely in playoff best ball be taking Tyrell Shavers, Josh Palmer, Gabe Davis, like these guys that are way down the depth chart on very good teams are way better picks in playoff best ball than the market seems to indicate. And also, I'm recording this very early in this given season. What you'll notice, and we are going to take Sam Laporta here, and because we're just going to go strength on top of strength. So we are really just setting up three total potential Super Bowls. But something you need to think is that as it gets a little bit closer and the seeds are more defined, like when we get to, it's December 28th, everyone knows who's playing everyone. You're also able to, in a given bracket, you were able to plan a bracket. So when we know the playoff matchups, you'll know, oh, well, I should actually never take Lions and Eagles players together because they play each other in the wild card round, or they play each other in the divisional round if they win their matchups. And that's not something you can plan this early out. I suppose you could start thinking about it early, but that's just something to hold in the back of your mind as we get a little bit closer. This really is more just the basics here. I'd probably like to add a running back. We do have 4 Bills players, and we have 1, 2, 3. So a Lions running back, actually, there's no way for us to add another complete Super Bowl with the Lions. But if we added another NFC running back, we could actually complete another potential Super Bowl. It wouldn't be a great lineup, but we could add in a Blake Corum, for example, which is actually what I am going to do. I'm going to add in, instead of taking Ty Johnson, I'm going to give us one more potential completed Super Bowl. So now this roster with a Buffalo Bills Super Bowl, it can have a full roster against the Philadelphia Eagles. It can have a full roster against the Rams, and it can have a full roster against the Lions. So that is a quick look at how to play playoff best ball. Of course, drop any questions you have below. Make sure that you like this video and make sure that you are subscribed for daily fantasy football videos. And I will see you guys all back tomorrow.